The court challenges to the 2020 election are over, that we all need to just move along. There's nothing to see here. But you're saying right now, I can hear you. You're saying, wait, didn't most courts dismiss their cases? Well, yes, they did, without even looking at the evidence. Now some rulings have been made and there are still cases to be adjudicated. The fact is, now that Joe Biden is illegitimately situated in the White House and Trump has dropped his own legal challenges, courts in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Virginia are beginning to rule the way widespread absentee balloting was handled in these states violated their own state laws. Wait, what? Well, let's look at a few of these states. Let's take Michigan first up. For example, this month, State Court of Claims in Michigan ruled that the Secretary of State, Democrat Jocelyn Benson, violated state law with her instructions on signature verification for absentee ballots. She was challenged in court by Republicans and one election clerk as the state legislature had not provided this guidance. Judge Christopher Murray ruled March 9th Benson did not have the authority to establish such standards by herself, that it needed to be a formal process. In other words, you don't just presume. He found her in violation of the Administrative Procedures Act. Wisconsin. The state Supreme Court ruled in December that state and local officials should not have given blanket permission for voters to declare themselves homebound for the 2020 election and skip ID requirements. One of the challenges was in Dane County, the highly populated area around the city of Madison. The justices ruled that county officials, as well as Governor Tony Evers, who had issued an emergency order earlier in the year, did not have the authority to do this. Of course, we all know Biden allegedly won Wisconsin by only 20,000 votes. Virginia. There's a law in their books against accepting ballots without postmarks that arrive after Election Day. And so, Frederick County Judge William Eldridge IV so ruled in a consent decree in a case brought by the Public Interest Legal Foundation. Additional legal challenges remain. Georgia and Arizona have audits and investigations of the voting machine logs pending. You know about this. Phil Klein of the Thomas More Society's Amistad Project has reported they're pursuing litigation over whether hundreds of millions of dollars donated by Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg to the Center for Tech and Civic Life, whatever that is, routed to local election officials in key battleground states, might have unlawfully influenced the election. You think? In fact, they're expanding their litigation, which includes Wisconsin, land of the unsupervised drop boxes, paid for by, wait for it, Center for Tech and Civic Life. None of this litigation is going to pry Joe Biden out of the White House. But our concerns right now should be this battle over how elections will be governed in the future. Of course, we know House Democrats' bill H.R. 1, now is in the Senate, would legalize the actions that state judges have just ruled unlawful, would render it all moot. But wait, there's more. Let's go to the mystery in Fulton County, Georgia. Election officials in Fulton County, Georgia have internal emails that are apparently heightening the mystery surrounding the eyebrow-raising late-night counting at the State Farm Arena. At 10:22 p.m. on election night, county spokesperson Regina Waller emailed county officials and the State Farm Arena spokesman that the workers in the absentee ballot processing area will get started at 8 a.m. tomorrow, which would imply they'd stopped work for the night. There are others, unclear and inconsistent emails as well from that night, and sworn affidavits that say everyone was told to leave, but that a small group remained behind. And finally, Sidney Powell's reasonable people argument. Finally, in some odd post-election news, Sidney Powell has come up with a novel way to try to fend off Dominion voting systems. As you know, they've sued her for $1.3 billion. In a 54-page motion to dismiss, her attorneys turned the tables on Dominion. In Dominion's suit, they have characterized her theories as wild accusations and outlandish claims. However, her attorneys argue that if Powell's claims were so incredibly wild and outlandish, then it must be and also be true that reasonable people would not accept such statements as fact, but view them only as claims that await testing by the courts through the adversary process. And if reasonable people would not believe what Powell was saying, then Dominion is not harmed. Whether reasonable people believe them or not, only an expert examination of the machines will tell us for sure, and that's what we've been asking for since November 3rd. If Dominion wants to show how off base she is, that would be an excellent way, unless, of course, there's some reason they don't want to. All right, moving on. So are you missing those Trump rallies, those wild patriotic rallies that ran across this nation in 2020? Well, you're in for some good news. The rallies are beginning to come back. One such rally is coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma in just a few days. My first guest tonight, Clay Clark. Clay's the founder, visionary of Thrive15.com, online edutainment, practical training for entrepreneurs taught by millionaires, mentors, everyday success stories. Clay, how did you get in? That does not sound like the resume of someone that's going to put on a rally.
Well, I'm a Christian. I'm a father of 5. I've built several multi-million-dollar companies, and it occurred to me that Hebrews isn't suspended by a fake pandemic. And so Hebrews says we should not forsake the gathering even as we draw closer. And I've noticed that a lot of churches are not open. And so I thought, what if we had a conference, an event, a health and freedom rally that could encourage churches and serve as a catalyst to change the national narrative? And so we organized this event, and the goal of this event is we have three goals here. Goal number 1, I want to kill the spirit of fear. You see, in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, it says, "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." Well, ladies and gentlemen, fear kills logic. And so the models that said that 2.2 million people would die, the models that said that 2.2 million people would die, those models were made by the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute. And even Dr. Deborah Birx came out and said they were wrong by 25 times. Point number 2, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are in a spiritual battle, and people deserve to know the truth about election fraud and medical fraud. And so we're bringing in General Flynn, we're bringing in Mike Lindell, we're bringing in Simone Gold, we're bringing in Sidney Powell, we're bringing in Charlene Bollinger, Patrick Byrne. They're all going to be in one place. 1, to kill the spirit of fear. 2, we want to share with you that the truth of what's going on. And 3, we want to give the American pastors and listeners and people out there who watch this program a practical action plan. In the Bible, it reads in Matthew chapter 5, verse 11, it reads, "Blessed are ye who are persecuted for his righteousness' sake." It doesn't say, "Blessed are ye who hide from a fear-based narrative based upon models that said that 2.2 million people would die," created by the Abdul Latif Jameel Institute. Ladies and gentlemen, we must embrace the idea that blessed are ye who are persecuted for his righteousness. We must become bold, because God hath given you, pastors, given you a spirit, and he's not giving you a spirit of fear, but he's giving you a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. And everybody needs to know that the models that said that 2.2 million people would die, those are false. Thank the Lord. 2, we know that the PCR tests, those COVID-19 PCR tests, Gene, those are falsely calibrated. They're supposed to be at 17 cycles, and they're set at 40 cycles, which is why the number of cases is wrong. Because if we had a massive number of cases of a super deadly virus, we should also see a massive number of deaths, but we don't. And we're going to have doctors at this event, and I'm telling you, folks, they've treated over 50,000 COVID-19 patients with 0 deaths. And that's a low number, Gene. Think about that. Using budesonide, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine. So we're going to kill the spirit of fear. We're going to share the truth about election fraud and medical fraud. And 3, General Flynn and many other great listeners and great viewers and great leaders out there are going to be joining us all in one place at Rhema Bible College, to share an action plan to open up this country again, and it's going to happen right through the church. The leaders of the church cannot remain silent. They must speak up now. And I'm not a pastor, but I'm going to hope to inspire some pastors out there, and we're going to be taking this thing all across the nation.
All right, so let's put up that graphic, guys, if you can. The picture of all the people that are going to be there at this conference. I mean, when I first saw this, Clay, I'm like, well, this must be a virtual event. And so I called you. I'm like, what are you doing? And it's like, oh, no, they're all going to be there. So I applaud you for getting all these wonderful speakers together. How can people, like, I know you're probably already full, but how can people watch this event?
Well, we had 4,500 seats available. We had 50,000 people request the seats, so we sold out real fast. But if you go to thrivetimeshow.com and you click on the conferences button, you're going to be able to stream this live. And I'm going to give the listeners 3 ways to watch this live. One, you go to thrivetimeshow.com and you click on the conferences button, and you can stream this 2-day event. The event starts at 10:30 to 12:30 in the morning. There's a meet and greet where the speakers can meet some of the attendees. And then the laser show begins, and it's just speaker after speaker. And by the end of this, you're going to know that election fraud and medical fraud did take place and is currently taking place. Also, Plan B, you can go to rhema.tv. That's RHEMA.tv, rhema.tv. And Plan C, because we know that big tech censorship is a real thing, you can go to Brighteon.com. That's BRIGHTEON.com. That's Brighteon.com. And then after the event, we're going to edit all of the events, put it all together, and release it on Rumble.com, where your listeners can hear the Thrive Time Show podcast. But we're going to kill the spirit of fear, folks. And if you missed it, again, the models that said that 2.2 million people would die, those were false by 25 times. Those PCR tests that keep the fear going, those are falsely calibrated. And 3, the COVID-19 virus is 100% treatable using budesonide, ivermectin, and hydroxychloroquine. And if your listeners will go to budesonideworks.com, budesonideworks.com, I've teamed up with doctors in all 50 states that will be happy to treat every one of your FlashPoint listeners. And I'm telling you, folks, when you meet these people or you see them virtually, guys like Dr. Richard Bartlett. Dr. Richard Bartlett's the former top medical advisor for the governor of Texas for 7 consecutive years. Dr. Richard Bartlett, and this man has treated thousands of COVID-19 patients with 0 deaths. And so our freedom fighting event is going to be mask free. And Gene, the only restriction we have is you have to give me a hug before you're allowed into the facility. A hug and a high five, a handshake. Yeah. We're old school, baby. It's mask free.
That's great. And FlashPoint is going to be there. We will be there broadcasting live. If you're coming to the event, make sure you come by and say hello to our team. It'll be there at the booth, and we're going to be there as well. And look for some of this on Victory Channel. We're going to see what we can work out there as well. So we want to make sure that's April 16th and 17th, Tulsa, Oklahoma. All right, let me pull in the rest of our star-studded guest list for tonight. General Michael Flynn, I know you all have been waiting, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant General and the U.S. National Security Advisor for the Trump administration. You know, a favorite, Mike Lindell, my pillow, Pastor Hank Kunneman, and our very own Lance Wallnau has graced us with his presence as well tonight. So glad all you gentlemen are with me tonight. General Flynn, I want to start with you. We talked about all that's going on, and I know that Americans are sitting there glued to their sets tonight. They're wanting to know, what is it? We want to hear from Michael Flynn. What happened there at the end? Because it's all real fuzzy, and I don't know what you can share and what you can't. But tell us what happened in the end. What do the American people need to know about what happened at the end of November 3rd?
Well, I mean, I first of all appreciate you allowing me to come on here. I know this is, I think, your 50th anniversary of the FlashPoint show, and I don't know what your whole audience is or who some of your audience members are. I understand that you have a lot of pastors, and I'm going to hit the pastors very hard here tonight. Here's what I would tell you is that what I would call the hard left in our country is working overtime to dismantle our Constitution and our constitutional republic. And everybody needs to understand that. So, you know, joking aside and all the kidding that we can do with each other, this is a very, very serious time. We are facing a transition in our country, transitioning from one path, which is the continuation of this experiment in democracy via our constitutional republic process and our Constitution and our freedoms and everything that comes with that, the sacrifices that come with that. And the other path is this path towards socialism, Marxism, communism. They like to use cool words like progressivism and liberalism, but it really amounts to a socialist state and state-controlled. And that's really what we're talking about. So all these things that you highlighted early on in your monologue, and some of the things that you just touched on with Clay, I mean, that's really the two paths that we are on. It is a massive major transition point in the United States of America. And I will tell you that the people of this country believe in their hearts, and they know, and even the other side, I guess, if you will, knows. And I hate to define it as two sides, because it's really not two sides, because we're all Americans at the end of the day. And I guarantee that there is a lot of buyer's remorse out there in the country we know that 80 million voted for Donald Trump, probably 66 million people voted for Biden. That's my guess. And that's kind of what we know to be true. I think those numbers are pretty clear. Here's what I would just say. So what do we need? Well, we really need to restore two components in this country. The first is and it's really a call to action. The first is sort of the cultural component, and that's the culture of who we are. Everything like from the 31 beautiful words in our Pledge of Allegiance, which really means it has a deep meaning for our country. The Pledge of Allegiance, it's a pledge to who we are as Americans, and it is a pledge, just as it says, of allegiance to the United States of America. And it's we use the word God in that beautiful stanza that we call the Pledge of Allegiance. And the other sort of call to action is really about our faith. And I think that in this country, this is really for the pastors, because I'm going to tell the pastors here in a second, and frankly, community leaders who watch this, and any of the other listeners that you have. But we all desire this simplified life, right? And I can tell you that my life has not been simple, certainly not over the last 4 years, but it's not been a simple life that I've led. It never is as a soldier, never is as a person who's decided to potentially sacrifice, one's life for the greater good or for the good of the country. But we all desire that simplified life. Forget about it. We're not going to have it. We're definitely not going to have it now, nor are we going to have it in the weeks, months, and years ahead. And that's not what how we are called to live. We are not called to live that way, Gene, in this life. Everybody knows it. The older that you get, the more you know that you have more and greater sacrifices that you have to do for whether it's your family, whether it's your community, whether it's yourself. And everybody goes through these different moments. I've seen it on the battlefield, and I've certainly seen it inside of our own system of government, which really has just outgrown itself, and it really is a detriment to our country right now. It really, really is. And what we need to do, this is really for the pastors, what you need to do for the pastors or those that are community leaders, you need to ensure that we have what I call an uninterrupted communication with the people of our communities. And that uninterrupted communication can't be through Zoom chats or can't be through all this craziness that we talk about in our lack of opening up the churches and the ministries around this country. I mean, one of the ideas that because this event in Tulsa is sold out, why not live stream it into church halls or ministries and gather all your parishioners or all your congregation inside of your ministries and live stream it in, and then talk about it after. Have a conversation with the people right there, face to face. That's one way to do it. So open up the doors, open up the gates. Let's get people back to church. Let's get people back into the faith. Our country and the lessons that I've learned in the last few years, but I've known this all my life. Really, it's about our faith and really who we are as faithful people. Our Constitution, which we should be enormously proud of, was built on faith. It was built on the Bible. Somebody said to me the other day, they started talking about how it goes back to a couple of hundred years prior to the founding of the country, to the Magna Carta. And I said, no, it doesn't. It goes back over 2,000 years ago. Our Constitution and our country is built on, and we should be fearless about this. It's built on the faith. It's built on the faith of who we are as Americans, and that Judeo-Christian principles and values that we should be fearless about is what our country is really all about. And so as we move forward, the one area that is going to be called upon even more are the sort of the faith-based leaders. So one of the things for the pastors, for people who think that they're community leaders, and maybe some in the communities that are part of these organizations that watch your particular show, these people have to start thinking about how do they get involved in Civics 101. So a pastor who's trying to cheer his community on for whatever ecumenical role that he's playing, why not step up and run for office? Because we are going to need more people of faith get involved in politics. The political class in this country, and any politicians that tells me what they've been doing for the last 10 years, and we've been working this hard and we've been working that hard. Well, obviously they haven't been working hard enough, because it's completely broken down. So one of my calls, if you will, out to the religious community is really to get involved, and don't just get involved by preaching what you know out of this beautiful book called the Bible, or comparing our Bible or the Bible to how our Constitution was designed and how we should be functioning as a nation, but get involved even more and encourage those community leaders that you know that may be great business leaders in the community. Tell them to step up. Now is the time to step up, and they need to do it fast. We are running out of time.
Yeah.
Any politician, anybody that you hear talk about this person's running in 2024 or that person's running in 2024, all these politicians who think that they're going to run for president in 2024, forget about it. If they're talking like that, that means that they are not talking about this fraudulent election that we just had that'll probably get your show canned off of YouTube for me saying it. We know it was fraudulent. We know that there was massive foreign interference. We have a number of countries, but the principal country that interfered in this election was China. And China is all over the geographic map of the United States of America. And the Chinese, they know this, and they don't like me talking about it because they know I know. And I will tell you something, one last thing, and I'll get off my soapbox. Faith is the foundation of our country. Our faith in God is the foundation of our country. If there was one thing that my wife and I learned over the last 4 years when we were in the toughest moments, was there was one entity or one place that we could go to, and that was to internally to our readings and to ourselves, and to really pray to God, because there was some dark moments that we faced. And I will tell you, dark moments that were put on me by our own government after I served almost 3.5 decades fighting for this country. I mean, it's just incredible. It's incredible. And we also, for our families, the families that are out there, our family leaders that are out there, we need to make sure that no one feels like they are alone. There's a lot of people out there that feel like they're alone. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of unknown. People are trying to figure out what's happening here. There's a lot of good things going on, I will tell you, in Michigan, in Arizona, the audit going on in Arizona, the stuff that you talked about in Georgia. I think that Pennsylvania is another place where people are fighting tooth and nail. New Hampshire is another place. So there's a lot of good things going on. And I know you have some other guests that are going to talk about that. But no one is alone. And many, many people in our country, from the founders on, pledged their very lives for this country. And many of them gave their lives for this country. And I'm sitting here today, and I know many of them over the last, certainly the period of time that I served in the military, many, many years in combat operations and in support of things that are, that we didn't totally understand, honestly. I mean, at the end of the day, we go to where our country sends us, and we've been doing that for 240 years. And there are many, many men and women who have pledged their lives and who have given their lives for our country. So I'm not about to stop fighting. I'm not about to stop sacrificing. And what I ask the religious community out there is to figure out how you can stop sitting around and talking about it, and how you now need to stand and do something about it. So my charge and my call to action is get involved. So, Gene, thank you very much for allowing me a few moments. I'll stay on as long as you want. Thanks.
Yeah, well,
God bless you.
Yes, thank you, General Flynn, and thank you for your service, first of all, but thank you for what you're standing for and what you've continued to stand for this nation. And as far as our audience, yes, there's a lot of pastors, but you're talking to a huge amount of Christian conservative Americans, as well as about 40 countries around the world that tune in every Tuesday and Thursday night. I want to bring in one of those patriots that you talked about right now, a businessman who decided to get involved in a big way. Mike Lindell, welcome back, Mike. I know you've got something to say after hearing General Flynn there and what we've talked about in these elections. Tell us what's been going on since we last saw you.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I agree with General Flynn. We got to look at the 2020 election, and we got to get that pulled down. When you said none of these are going to change with Biden, I totally disagree. This is all going to end up at the Supreme Court, and they're going to vote 9-0 and pull this election down. Just an update of what's going on. We came out with, it's called Scientific Proof. You can watch it at LINDELLTV.com. We came out with that yesterday when we were filming Absolute Interference. We did a whole nother show, 2-hour show on, brought in different people. And this is about the China interference that General Flynn was talking about that attacked our country through these machines and with these algorithms. But there was a guy on the show as we were filming. I kind of did it like a commercial where I hadn't talked to him ahead of time. And all of a sudden he starts telling me about this 2010 census. He's a physicist. His name is Dr. Frank, and he had got involved in the Pennsylvania fraudulent election there because this congressman named Kathy Barnett, she won the night of the election, and then all of a sudden the next day she lost. He goes, this is impossible. Well, they actually went door to door to see who people had voted and if they had voted, and they validated his algorithms that they had used the 2010 census to set the footprint in these machines. Well, I was blown away by this, so I released a 1-hour show with just him and I in that. So you watch this and you will absolutely will not believe it. It's just like, are you kidding me? This is 100% evidence of what went on during this election through these machines. They could not be done by humans. What happened there? It had to be done by a massive computer. And anyway, this Dr. Frank, I said, well, boy, did this happen in Ohio? He's actually from Ohio. He said, boy, did it happen. He went through all 80 some counties, and every county had the exact same footprint. And what I mean by that is, if you watch this documentary, every county, what it is the census of the 2010 census. So what they went by that when they set these registered voters, what that means is like a 20-year-old in this county, that percentage of 20-year-olds, the same percentage of 20-year-olds voted in every county throughout the state. Same way with 50-year-olds or 45-year-olds, the exact same percentage. So it's that you could fit it like a glove and you're going to say, wow, this percentage is going to vote in every county. It's impossible. So we took that and you plug that in with what we did in Absolute Proof, the cyber attack, which we already have now, all the IP addresses, we have the IDs of the computers, we have everything to put this, it fits like a glove. And then we added to this documentary, we added whistleblowers. You're not going to see their faces because what I want to do is for the next 5 to 6 weeks, just like you did at the start of your show, educate the people in all this stuff that happened in this cyber attack and just dump the evidence out and everywhere. So my audience is a Democrat. I have a lot of Democrat friends that they're going, wow, what's going on? This is not the Democrat Party. And I said, no, it's not. It's communism and socialism that have come into this country. And they're very worried. I think, what I tell people is, God's got his hand in all of this. And right now, during this amazing time we're in, everyone's getting a chance to see that socialism and communism isn't having a cup of coffee and being social with your friends. It's a terrible, terrible, terrible thing. And this manifested because of the biggest cyber attack in history, this biggest crime against the United States and humanity. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, you should both be worried. And this is going to be, when this manifests out, though, I believe it's going to be a great uniting of our country. And it'll be, once again, we'll be one nation under God. And we're going to look back and say, wow, all this had to happen to get us to this great spot in the future. And I believe we're in the greatest revival in history. People don't look for hope and don't look for Jesus unless something's going wrong or they're, and that hope, everybody's looking for hope right now.
That's right.
But I want to say one more thing. I am going to announce too, I'm coming out my social media platform that's called Frank. It's indestructible. It's going to handle up to 1 billion people. And it's going to be like a YouTube. You're going to have a safe place to go on there where you can speak out and you don't have to worry about being canceled.
So when will we see that?
It's very exciting right now.
When we're going to see that online?
The week of the 12th. I hope I have it up and running by Tulsa because that'd be a great place for people so everybody can speak out. They don't have to worry about this platform being taken down. But it's going to be amazing, and it's going to give us our voice back. Another thing, too, I want to announce, when you talk about fighting back, next week My Pillow, who got sued by Dominion, is going to come out. Obviously, we're going to ask for dismissal for their frivolous lawsuit. But what we are going to do is we're going to sue them. And Alan Dershowitz is even involved, where he's got hired with my lawyers as an advisor, because he said this will be the biggest lawsuit, the most important in history for the First Amendment for free speech. He said this has never happened since 1800, where you have used a company has used leverage to say, I'm going to sue you if you talk about or say the word Smartmatic or Dominion or any of these things. And so there's a lot of great things coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And we thank you, Mike, for all your efforts there and all that you've done for this nation. You're a true patriot, and we applaud you for that. Let me just clarify what I said in my monologue. What I meant was, by natural means, you're just not going to go to get him out of office. There has to be something supernatural. Now, you said something that caught my attention. You said we're going to see the Supreme Court go 9-0. Now, I will agree with you on that, because I'm going to believe that you know something that I don't know. Because in the natural, I don't see how in the world that can happen. In fact, let me get Lance Wallnau to weigh in on this with the Supreme Court. What do you think, Lance? You've heard the general, you've heard Mike Lindell.
Well, honestly, I think if you ask the general, do you think that the Department of Justice and the intelligence community was legitimately concerned about something that he was doing that was illegal, that needed to be dealt with? Or were they not trying to set him up and put him away? The thing that's frightening about our history is, and Christians watch this, and the general knows that so many of us who he doesn't even know were praying for him because we saw that he was targeted. And it's a scary thing when the sacred institutions that you trust to protect you are weaponized against. If they would do that to General Flynn, what will they do to an annoying little preacher with a Facebook feed? So here's my problem. I believe Mike Lindell. I want to believe Mike Lindell. I want to see Mike Lindell get the facts out there. But I think that they already know facts. I think that when this is exposed, you're going to see that a lot of people don't want the truth. They don't want to hear the truth. They want any pretense. I think that they know the science on COVID is specious. They know that the social distancing is based on a rule from 1868. It's not even practical. They know that the masks don't do anything. They want to use them anyway because their goal is to control you. Their goal is totalitarian. I go back to what Rush Limbaugh said in one of his rants while he was yet in his prime. And it bothered me when he said it, because as a Christian, I'm all about reconciliation. I'm all about kind of bipartisaness. And you hear pastors all the time talking about, I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican. You know, at some point in time, you might have to choose whether you're in the North or in the South in the Civil War, whether you're pro-Nazi or not pro-Nazi in Germany. And when you have evil and good in a contest like we've got, you have to be able to recognize we don't win because the truth suddenly comes out, because if someone wants to suppress the truth and unrighteousness, they're going to. If somebody wants to resist the truth in their heart, they will reject the truth that's in the evidence. That's the wickedness of the human condition. These people have to be exposed so that enough Americans can become informed and mobilized and outraged to recognize the existential threat that this party now represents. This Marxist, socialist, communist, totalitarian takeover has to be seen, not as something we can reconcile if we just give them enough truth and enough prayer. We have to remove them from office. We have to vote them out of office. We have to move into office. And I think that this is going, and I agree with General Flynn that we have to do this expeditiously. What Mike Lindell may be giving us is the gift of an argument to wake up the church to the fact that it has allowed itself. I'm talking about Christians, Gene, that I debate constantly, who believe the election was won by Biden.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, let me bring in a pastor right now, Pastor Hank Kunneman. Pastor Hank, you know, you're the only full-time pastor on this on this program tonight. It's speaking, you know, General Flynn was speaking to you and all pastors like you, and it's what Lance was saying. You somewhere along the line, people are going to have to pick. You know, are you left or are you right? Are you where your stand is? Is that what you're seeing from the circles that you run in?
Sure. I think the most important thing right now is the enemy fears, listen, pastors, Listen, leaders, the enemy fears the assembling or the gathering of the church. He understands what took place on the day of Pentecost in Acts chapter 2, where they assembled. Power began to fall by the power and the person of the Holy Spirit. And so this is not the time to be shut away. It's not the time to cower. It's the time to assemble. We had to in Omaha, Nebraska, when they told us that, we had to shut down. We complied for a little while, and then we started saying, wait a minute, why is the secular businesses being able to carry on, so to speak, without the restrictions that they're putting on us, the pastors and churches? And so we just began to defy that respectfully, and we opened our churches up over a year ago. We've had very few cases of what they call a pandemic, which really has become a scandemic. But Gene, I want to address this because there's a lot of dialogue going, and as you know, I stand in a place where I speak prophetically for God. And there is something that I need to say to those that are watching tonight that I feel like I represent the heart of God. My eyes, these eyes right here, you can call me false, you can say what you want, but these eyes have seen the coming of the glory of the Lord upon the earth and upon this nation. These eyes have seen the future. God has allowed me to see it. And there was one point where I didn't see the clown show and the different things that are going on right now. God showed me a new America. He showed me a put it back movement, that there would be things that they would try to do, but ultimately God would reign with His power in His hand, and there would be a remnant people that would push this to a forefront where God would have His way. God would supernaturally intervene. Yes, we can look at things in the natural. We need to look at things in the natural, but we must not ever discount the supernatural power of God. And I want to just say my closing remarks on this. We are experiencing right now Passover. Over 4,000 years ago, there was a nation. It didn't look possible. Exodus 14:5 says that Pharaoh's heart was against the people. We're seeing this government right now, this administration against the people of God, the nation that is under God. But you know what happened? God set them up for a trap, the Egyptians, and they went into the Red Sea, and it looked like all hope was lost for a nation who was trusting God. And even at one point, that nation that was trusting God got into fear and began to say, watch this, let us go back to Egypt. For wasn't it better when we went back to Egypt? In other words, listen to me, Christian, pastor, patriot. If you love God and love the United States, don't be like what Israel almost got into their own trap, and that was this. They were willing to give up their freedoms. This is about a fraudulent election. We cannot have a successful election going forward until we deal with November 3rd because of what took place. Don't lose your freedom. But I want to say this. The waters, the Bible said, began to open, and at the same time, there was a nation and there was a pursuing army. It looks right now like the enemy is trying to overtake this nation, trying to overtake the church. He's not going to succeed. Remember, God intervened 4,000 years ago. He's going to intervene again. That's why He's raising up people like General Flynn, Mike Lindell, others, because there is going to come a knocking off of their chariot wheels. Justice will prevail. God will have His way. And notice my last statement. The Bible says in Exodus 14 that the waters returned. And you know what? It dealt with the injustice that was taking place. But the waters returning, meaning this. I believe in all my heart, it's what I saw. God has showed me that things will return as they're supposed to be, but it will be better.
Amen. And that doesn't give us permission to just sit back and wait and watch.
That's
and
correct.
We've got to stay
That's
involved. All right, I want to go to the border. Well, before we get to the border, I want to talk about this program, a little programming note. You can always watch FlashPoint. General Flynn made a note about the fact that some of these programs have disappeared from some of your social media sites. So if you ever can't find FlashPoint, go to govictory.com/FlashPoint. All of our programs are always archived right there. You can watch all of the programs right there on the website. But in the meantime, share this program. This has been already, gentlemen, some great information tonight for those of you patriots out there that know something's not right and it's still got to be handled. It's great information. And you do your part by sharing this video and getting it out to your friends and family. And let's make this public. Let's make this viral. I want to go right now live to the border to Tim Fox, who's live right outside of Del Rio. Tim, tell us about the border situation and some of what you've discovered today.
Well, Gene, I am here in Del Rio. Behind me is the legal point of entry between Texas and Mexico. Unfortunately, not enough people are using these legal points of entry, which is why we're in the mess we are here in the United States. We were on a little ride-along earlier today in Zavalya County. There's DPS troopers you saw in that video. They lost a brother this week. And, Gene, it kind of underscores the importance of, and I think General Flynn can probably attest to this, how tough a job these guys and gals in uniform have. And that's why this is such a special assignment for me, because I, like you and all of our viewers, love our men and women in uniform and the job that they're doing and the job they're having to do under such terrible circumstances. They certainly need our support, but they definitely need our prayers, Gene.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Thanks for reporting that from the border. Listen, and we do respect every one of our border agents and all of the men and women in uniform that help protect our borders, like Tim said, right there on the border in Texas. This border thing is just not going away, and it's going to be something that's going to have to be handled. And Lance, I'll let you weigh in first on this. With the border, do you think the Democrats or the left, did they just think this would just kind of go away and they wouldn't get the media coverage it has?
This is the insidious part about the Biden administration. He's not making any of these decisions. This is an elite that is behind him. Susan Rice, Obama. There are other people who are, imagine their desire to rapidly undo the damage that Trump had done to the Obama legacy and use either Biden or Hillary in the last election to make that happen. So here you got the border situation, which is kind of like, look at the debt. They've got another $1.9 trillion they want to do for porculus, which isn't even dealing with COVID, which we now know is a suspicious thing in the first place, the pandemic. Then you've got a $2 trillion infrastructure bill going to possibly $5 trillion. I believe that these people have a philosophy of monetizing economies that is cashless, and crashing the U.S. economy is on the table as part of the logic that goes to a new global reset of currency. Remember, these are globalists that are strongly behind this system, and they're not thinking as U.S. citizens. They're thinking as people of a global order. So I don't think they care about having 1 million migrants crash through the border. I think the fact that it hits Texas is actually gratifying to them, because Texas and Florida are their main adversary states in terms of prosperity and freedom. I think that even the COVID strand that we should be looking at, and Clay has to investigate this, is the possibility of a mutation that could be coming in through Brazil. And we have to be watching how Biden is making us vulnerable in his administration to exposure to COVID, while they're shutting down businesses and churches and still fighting our freedom with masks. They're flooding the borders with maskless people that aren't being vetted based upon health or whether or not they're criminals. So I don't think they care. I think that they're going to use Biden like a heat shield, discard him, and put Kamala Harris in before midterms.
I agree. Let's look at here. We don't see even Joe Biden put Kamala Harris in charge of the border situation. She's not even going to come to the border. And so, General Flynn, I want you to weigh in on this. Talking about our borders, how important is it? Is it something that we should be? It sounds silly, but it really should be something we should be concerned about, isn't it?
Yeah. First of all, the great report by your correspondent down there in Del Rio. We cannot thank the men and women who serve on our border patrol, in our immigrations and customs organization, all those that serve on what I call the front line of freedom on all of our borders, whether they're our ocean borders, whether they're our border with the country of Mexico, or whether they're our northern border. All the men and women who are sacrificing their lives in some cases. They are sacrificing their time. and their families are scared to death when they get down there in some of these places, particularly along the Mexico border. So illegal immigration. First of all, we don't even know what the number of illegals are in this country. I think the last last census, they talked about 20 million. I think that one of the studies that I saw recently was that they believe somewhere between 10 and 15% of illegal aliens actually vote. So that would be, you're talking about 3, maybe 5 million people who are illegal in this country in various states that are voting in our elections. So that's just one problem. But the illegal immigration, the bigger issue, it's really a national security issue, because illegal immigration into this country affects every fiber, every aspect of our livelihoods. And that's our education system, our healthcare system, our economic system. I mean, it just affects every aspect of who we are as America, because there's just simply no control. I mean, never mind the drug flow that comes in here, and that really does affect our healthcare system. So we've got a massive problem, and it's always been there. And but it is a manageable problem. One of the things that President Trump was trying to do is manage this problem, and manage it in a way that if you wanted to come to this country, you have to come through the legal gates that your guy, I think Lynn was down there showing or standing at, instead of coming in through the illegal gates or the illegal holes in these walls that the Biden administration has decided not to continue with. So, I do what I do for one reason, and I'm going to continue to do what I do for one reason, and that is for my children and my grandchildren. I've lived my life. I'm at a point where I'm fed up. I'm beyond the nonsense stage of my life right now, and I have some decisions that I can make. I could just go away and shut up, but I will tell you, I have grandchildren, and I know one thing, that our Constitution will not be saved in Washington, D.C. It's going to be saved by the enlightened citizens of our country who cherish freedom. If we want to continue to breathe the fresh air of liberty that we have and have had for a couple of 100 years now, in order for us to do that, people better wake up and get involved. And one other aspect that we really haven't talked about, we talk about men and women, more than half of our country are women. Right. And I actually think that there is a much, much greater role. And I'm going, in fact, I can name 4 women that I'm going to go around and endorse for various offices, whether it's a county board of supervisors or whether it's a seat in the United States House of Congress, or House of Representatives. So these are strong, brave women who have stepped up. And I would encourage more women to think about it, because women are the nurturers and the community leaders and the business people in our country. They're pastors, they're church leaders, they're community leaders. So that's another aspect of our country that has to decide. There's things that we can control, there's things that we can't control, but then there's ways that we can actually decide how we want to control, and particularly our lives. And we are going to run out of time, and illegal immigration is just one of those components that this particular administration is just going to, it's like, don't look here, there's nothing to see. And that's, to a degree, a lot of this is distraction. Last point from me, Gene, on this topic is this business about distraction. There's so many things that are being thrown at the American people right now, and I call it noise. And all these distractions are being thrown at the American people because they know, they being the hard left, they know they got caught on the 3rd of November, and they know that there was a massive foreign interference against our country, a foreign attack of our election integrity, of our election system by a foreign entity, and that entity is China. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts, and that's going to be proven out in the days and weeks ahead, because the one thing about the truth is that it always comes out.
Yes, amen. Well, thank you for not giving up. I can speak for all of our audience. We thank you, sir, for not giving up and staying in the battle. Thank you for that. Mike, what he was saying there, I'm going to give you just a couple minutes here because we're almost out of time for this half hour. We are going to extend for a half hour. We'll be back at the top of the hour for another 30 minutes, so you want to make sure you stay right here tuned in to FlashPoint. But Mike, I want you to speak to what General Flynn just mentioned about China. And I know you've gotten a lot of, you've invested a lot in getting to the facts. Just what have you found about China?
Well, what we found is they were over 60% of the attack of the cyber attack came from IP addresses in China. And we've had a team, it's not my team, but another team that I'm well aware of that went over there and validated the IP address and the IDs of the computers that were over there in China that did this cyber attack. And, and just because the machines or the servers were in other countries other than China, my belief is that they were probably, almost all of it was, the CCP coming into our country and this socialism and which led to this China agenda that's in office right now. They just, it's really when I can't say it enough. When we did this new documentary, Absolute Interference, it's all about this China and attack and what they could do. You need a supercomputer to do this, but you also need all these machines to be able to set these algorithms. And this is what happened to everybody. I wouldn't be sitting here going 100% that this is, that I'm 100% all in. It's real. It's happened. And when you said before, I want everybody to know this, you said it would take supernatural, another miracle. That miracle is coming. When I say a 9-0 thing at the Supreme Court, even if they deny it, I'm telling you, that election is getting pulled down. When you have 100% proof of an attack by a foreign country, this is an attack on our country, not just it's on all the people. When Democrats were so afraid of the use of these machines as soon as last spring with Amy Klobuchar and others in the movie Kill Chain, they were afraid. They're saying, and our election integrity has gone bye-bye if we have these machines. Well, then just because that's the party that got the benefit from this China attack, what's going to happen is everyone is a Democrat, and they're going to realize by the time we dump all this evidence that, wow, this is an attack by China. This election's going to get pulled down. And I'll say it on your show. I really believe that we will have our president that won 80 million to 66 million in office by August, and that'd be Donald Trump.
Well, I'll agree with that any day of the week. All right, before we get off for this half hour, Clay, you've been quiet. We got you at the beginning, and you've been listening. Thank you for doing what you're doing with the event coming up there in Tulsa. Tell the people again the website and how they can be a part.
Yeah, well, what you want to do is go to thrivetimeshow.com. That's thrivetimeshow.com. And you click on the conferences button. And when you click on the conferences button, you're going to be able to stream this event live, this event featuring Mike Lindell, Lynn Wood, General Flynn, Sidney Powell, the author of Chicken Soup for the Soul. We all have like 4 or 5 copies of that book, right? Dr. Richard Bartlett, President Trump's photographer, is going to be there. You have Patrick Burns going to be there. I can go on just listing these names. It's going to be an epic event, but we say, why are we having this event? Ladies and gentlemen, we are having this event because we cannot forsake the gathering together, even as we draw closer to the end here. We must do the follow. We're doing this event for 3 reasons. 1, we want to kill the spirit of fear. Everybody needs to know that the models that said that 2.2 million people would die, pastors, church members, listen to this. The models that scared us, that said that 2.2 million people would die, those models were wrong by 25 times. The PCR tests that they're using to justify the ongoing lockdowns, those are falsely calibrated. They're supposed to be set at 17 cycles, and they're set at 40 cycles. Ladies and gentlemen, discover the truth about the election fraud and medical fraud on April 16th and 17th at thrivetimeshow.com.
Amen. And FlashPoint will be there as well. The Victory Channel, you want to make sure you stay tuned here every day between now and then to know the latest on what's coming up there. So many of you are sitting there at home before we go off the air tonight for this half hour, and you're wondering, well, what do I do? How do I stay in faith? And how do I trust God in this? Because nothing that I'm seeing other than the little crack in the door right now. How do I stay in faith? Well, what you're doing is you're watching the network right now that is going to give you the more details. Now, we don't get into, a lot of you don't watch this network on a regular basis. I want to encourage you to watch the Victory Channel. You will find out how to stay in faith, how to understand what we are supposed to do as people of faith, men and women, and how we're supposed to walk victorious and not in a place of disastrous and defeat, because that's not who we are. So thank you, all of you guys, for being with me tonight. General Flynn, Mike Lindell, Lance, WALLNAU, Pastor Hank, and of course, Clay Clark, thank you all for joining us tonight. Listen, this is the victory that overcomes the world. Not only is it our faith, you need to stay plugged in. It's time to stand up, Pastor, open your church, take your mask off, and see who God really is. We don't want to miss a minute of what's coming up. Don't go away. We're going to be right back after the break for extended coverage right here on FlashPoint.